work together for this.
Yeah, but maybe you shouldn't be the one communicating.
Right.
Maybe it should be your nurse and your patients. And I think they listen to patients even more than they listen to nurses.
Yeah.
And especially patients who can talk from a first-person perspective and say, hey, this happened to me.
Yeah.
That's a very, very powerful statement.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very useful.
Yes, here in the front.
Yes, I think that there's an aspect to it that we have not talked about so much when it comes to transplantation, and that is that, I mean, we are all patients. We have all been more or less adherent in times of our lives, and our doctors or healthcare professionals have been more or less happy with that we took the pills that they prescribed or not. But when you have done a transplantation, then it's not only that society has like taken money in their hands to transplant you, but there's a person that has given the organ. I work with heart, so for me it's not a question about living donors. And I think that we as healthcare professionals and even the patients, there's a certain aspect to it that suddenly if the patient denies treatment, there is a freedom taken from those patients, because suddenly I think we as healthcare providers have a feeling that they are not allowed to do that. Isn't that an aspect that I have not heard that we've been speaking about today, and I have no idea if this is investigated, and how do I mean, I work with transplanted and with non-transplanted patients, and I think there's a difference in them, and I'm not aware of how do I treat them actually.
I do think that a lot of transplanted people have a very high level of gratitude, we might call it, and that they feel they let down not just the person who has given the organ, whether that person is living or dead. Sometimes it doesn't matter, because then there's this family that they let down. They also very often feel that they let down their doctors and all the healthcare professionals who have done so much to help them. And I don't know if there's any studies, maybe some of the other presenters know, how much of an impact this has. I don't know. But it's definitely there.
It's an important issue indeed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question.
Hello there. What I haven't seen, or maybe it hasn't been mentioned, or I didn't see it on the booklet, but in 2011, I had an abstract where, without getting into details, I used narrative medicine as a validation tool. And I think that is something that is ignored. It's becoming more mainstream over the last 10 years, roughly. But I really recommend everybody to look into that, because patient stories and doctor stories validate each other.
Okay, thank you for this addition.
I absolutely agree. I studied narrative medicine quite a bit. And I know one of the universities here in Denmark has actually used or have begun using it for their medical students. I think it's an elective, and they're talking about having it being a mandatory program.
No other questions? Then we will conclude this session, and I hope... Oh, there's one question? I'm sorry.
About the education part, so with living kidney donation, for example, one of the requirements before you accept a living donor is they have a living donor advocate that they have to essentially teach back to them what they understood regarding all the education that they received, whether it's from physicians, nurses, coordinators, about what the risks of kidney donation is. Well, from the transplant recipient perspective, we go over the complications of immune suppression and the data that we have regarding the longevity, but also the increased risk of death in certain people who are on the wait list following transplant. Do you think if we ask the recipients to write to us their expectations or teach back expectations on a formal basis, similar to living donation, for example, would that be offensive to recipients, or would it be something looked upon as favorably?
Personally, I think that might be a really good idea. Maybe not write back, because some are not able to write very well, but you could make a questionnaire or something like that that will show how much they understand. Yeah. And I say there's not so much that the tool itself will help, but what I think will help is the fact that they have to take it from a teaching, they have to take it from receiving information to suddenly using information, and we know this creates a much better understanding of virtually everything.
In fact, that's the way we also do it in medical education for our students. do not give only the information, but we ask the students to recapitulate the information and to give presentations about it. And I think that's also the way we should inform and educate the patients.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Just a
Final
small
question?
addition to what you are saying. I was once just giving a lecture in the Pediatric Transplant Association, and I heard that when they made the transition of the pediatric patient to the adult care, they asked the young adolescent to write a letter to the adult nephrologist, telling the story about their kidney transplant, and they can write their expectations. I found that idea marvelous.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you agree we had a very wonderful session with great speakers. And also on behalf of Finn, I would like to thank the speakers again for coming here and give their presentations. And I also thank the audience for their attendance.
Wow, we've just been watching this session, state-of-the-art number 9 here at the Bella Center in Copenhagen. It was running a little bit over time because the coffee break has just started here on day 4 of the ESOT 2019 Congress. And the title of this session that you've just been watching was The Patient's Definition, and it was all about what we as medical professionals should understand about how patients perceive what we do and connecting those two worlds. You just saw on stage Henning Sundergaard sharing his patient perspective, and the session was chaired by Luc Hillebrands from Nijmegen and Finn Gustafsson from Denmark right here. And this seems to be a big theme here in the ESOT Congress, connecting all these different communities and also specifically connecting the patient community to the transplantation professionals. So if you've just joined us either live on Facebook or YouTube, welcome. Good morning if you're in Europe. Good afternoon if you're in the Far East, or even a very, very early good morning if you are in the Americas. You can now participate for the next 30 minutes while we have our coffee break over here, before we tune into the last session, the presidential session. And to show to you how this Congress has been connecting with patients and patients' perspective, let me take you back to Saturday, when actually representatives of several patient organizations met up here in Copenhagen.
We have had today a wonderful meeting with the patient organizations, all together to create a bridge between ESOT, patients, and health professionals. This meeting is needed because we need to create a platform for the patients that they can find a place to represent their voice and to start to communicate with us as health professionals and to start to interact all together for a better success of their treatment. They should become more self-confident on being responsible for their own care and their own treatment, but as well to help to other patients to be involved in all the process. The benefit for health professionals, there is a lot, because we need to start thinking more on patients as they have their ownership of their own health. And the voice from the patients is essential for us, because when we do research, when we do any clinical trial, or where we would like to develop a new tool for transplantation, we always need to the recipients of the organs that we are going to transplant. And this is the need that we have to start discussing and involve them inside our organization.
This meeting is important. It's probably the first time it's ever been done this way, but it's a really good idea to get the patient associations together to talk about how transplantation can be improved, but how the patient view on that can work with the professional view to come up with something maybe new, something better to improve transplantation and outcomes for the future.
We have discussed many different relevant things today about organ transplant, or about waiting lists, and about diseases in many different ways. So I'm happy to be here.
I think think the most important takeaway from this meeting so far has been very much about patient involvement and patient empowerment, and that actually, yes, there's quite a lot we can do as patients, but I think the support of our transplant teams, so the nurses as well as the surgeons, to learn about what we can expect if we have a transplant, and also what the future might mean to us. So whether it's psychosocial support or whether it's the medical outcomes, those things are equally important to patients, and being able to have surgeons work together with us to share those views has been very revealing.
The most important thing is that in different countries there are different practices. And the aim of today is to make an inventarization of that, and hopefully that's the first step to come to a more equal system throughout Europe.
The three main results of the meeting are we have created a platform, a network of people, patient associations, health professionals, and all together we have more things in common between all the organ recipients than differences. The second point is that we need to create a common voice to be represented inside the European Commission, inside all the competent authorities, to the health professionals and to the scientific community, to give them voice to be able to talk. And as well as health professionals, we need to have a platform to interact with them in a platform that protect their rights and facilitate the communication with them.
So connecting with the patient community is really one of the key themes, one of the multiple key themes here at the ESOT 2019 Congress in Copenhagen. If you're just joining us live on Facebook or on YouTube, live or in recording, welcome. You are now watching a free preview, so to speak, of the 24-hour live broadcast that has been and is still going on here at the ESOT Congress. And if you want to join us for the last plenary session, make sure you sign up and hop over to esottransplantlive.org. This is ESOT's educational platform, which offers a wide array of professional education, recordings of all the sessions, specific accredited courses. So if you haven't done so, hop over, because then we're going to take you in about 15 minutes into the final plenary session. Traditionally, ESOT's presidential session, because it's hosted by the immediate past president of ESOT, Stefan Schneeberger, and the recently, just now elected president, Vassilios Papalois. And earlier in this little studio, I met up with both of them, and I'd like to share the interview I had with Stefan on the first morning of the Congress, where he was still the ESOT president for the last 48 hours, and he looked back at his last 2 years of being president. Hi, and welcome here in Copenhagen, where I just stepped on our bikes for a bike ride with ESOT's president, Stefan Schneeberger. Stefan, good morning.
Hi, Gerrit.
It's Sunday morning. We're ready, getting ready for the ESOT Congress 2019 here in Copenhagen. I think if people Google your name, they find a video where you were 24 hours installed at the ESOT president in Barcelona, where we chatted. Maybe if they Google again in the future, they find this video, 48 hours before you step down. How do you look back on these past 2 years?
Well, Gerrit, it certainly was a very eventful time. Those 2 years, when I was looking into going into presidency, I thought this is all about representing the organization and smiling and shaking hands. But then it turned out that it wouldn't be like that, because the field is changing, and it's changing very rapidly. You could also say that it's actually turning upside down. With the dynamics of those changes, we had to respond also as a field and as an organization to a field that on one side is matured, with matured products, but with new trouble, with new problems, that sort of a new generation and new technologies are coming to the market. So you have both, like a very matured part of
and
the
then you talk
discipline.
about the drug side of the market.
Exactly.
Yes.
And also almost a startup sense and feeling, and a group of people and companies coming to the discipline, which makes it a very interesting but also very challenging mix. So as an organization, we have to adopt and have to adopt very rapidly to these changing circumstances.
What kind of measures did you take to accommodate for that with ESOT?
Well, for us, basically, it is moving from a pure marketing perspective to a research and developing perspective. So as an association, we have to support the R&D aspect, development aspects of new technologies and new ideas that come to the field of transplantation only slowly, sometimes in a preclinical state. So for an organization like ESOT, that means changing the products that we offer, changing also the business model, basically. And that all had to happen over a short period of time because these changes, they happen very rapidly.
Yeah.
So marketing capital is decreasing not just by 20%, but we're talking 50, 70%.
Yeah.
So you have to find solutions and they have to find them fast.
Yes.
While you keep the organization running and everything that is established has to go on.
Exactly. And what is something you're really proud of when you think about that? What have you done to really start to change direction?
I think if we succeeded with this, it is implemented possibly also and already in this Congress. I think the spirit, the content, and the circumstances and the format of this meeting has already adopted to the changing needs. And if that was successful, I think it should be displayed at this Congress. Although I didn't do the Congress, I hope that we created the spirit and we enabled for this to happen here.
So for those online viewers who are not with us in Copenhagen, where would they have found it in this Congress?
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's each and everywhere. I just started participating in one of the specialty update symposia.
Yeah.
And it's already all about the new technologies and how they are and how they will be implemented into the field. So it is happening from minute one. And if you look at the program, it's actually implemented in each and every corner. So it's harder to avoid these new subjects rather than to find them.
Exactly. So it's everywhere. And when you look forward, because you step down as president, but obviously you stay active in the field of transplantation, how do you see the future, near future changing? What does it mean, all these new technologies, these startups? What does it mean for your work as a transplantation surgeon in your case?
Well, it does, and it will further impact on our everyday life. Our life as transplant physicians, as transplant surgeons, has already changed dramatically. For example, we almost avoid nighttime procedures now, something that was unthinkable up until just a few years ago. Now we're discussing organ reconditioning centers, places where you would take organs to, they would be preserved, they possibly would be reconditioned, and then you do the transplant maybe a day later, maybe a week later. And with that, a whole new discipline in medicine is generated. And that is what's so exciting about transplantation. If you take a bird's eye view on the field, it emerged in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There was a huge excitement and it revolutionized medicine in a certain aspect. And in reality, what happened then, it became more a matured field with less innovation. For the last 15, 20 years, it was going well. The outcome was extremely good.
Yeah.
And everybody was kind of satisfied with that. So there was no push for innovation. Now, with the changing circumstances, there is another need for innovation and new technologies with the older donors, with the DCD donors, and that triggered new technologies. And eventually, these new technologies, they open up a new era in medicine, and that is the treatment of organs in addition to treating patients.
Kind of in a new in-between phase, basically.
Absolutely.
There's a whole new phase when the organ is ex vivo and you can do all these kind of things with it.
And it's easy to predict that we will see hospitals or centers that would treat and focus on the treatment of organs and not just patients. So this is a reality that is growing already. And this will give transplantation, once again, the chance to change medicine, change an aspect of medicine. So I see this as the biggest chance in transplant medicine ever since I entered the field.
Wow, interesting, and a great outlook also. Now, when you step down, you might get some more time back. What will you do with that new acquired time?
I'll do some more bike riding.
Exactly, yeah. Well, for those of you who follow Stefan on Instagram, it's a real recommendation. There's some awesome biking in the Austrian mountain going on there. What else? What else can we expect from you in the field of transplantation?
Well, I'm also involved in our own center, of course, in Innsbruck. So the focus now is on establishing new technologies, innovative medicine back in our home center. And beyond, probably, to establish a network, international collaborations, and help advancing the field. We want to generate our own organ reconditioning center. So that certainly will be a focus. And I believe with these new technologies, a lot of opportunities will arise. New companies will be formed, and we'll see, maybe one day, I'll be involved in one of these companies.
Exactly. Well, just to round this bike ride up, I think it's a nice shout out talking about new companies evolving. Tuesday night, we have a very special meeting. How do you describe it to other people?
Well, that Stanford session, as we call it, I think should generate and build on the spirit of this startup phase, this startup element that we just talked about. Now there's a new discipline. There is new possibilities that are being addressed, not by just the specialists in the field, but also by the industry. Bringing the two together is something we want to achieve at this session. So this is a joint effort with Stanford, who has a spirit and a background and a lot of knowledge on startup industry.
It's in the heart of Silicon Valley,
It
right?
is.
So that's where all the startup magic is happening.
And that's the spirit and that's the idea of this session. Bringing that here in a bidirectional interaction with Copenhagen, with our association.
Very exciting. Now, if you look at this and you are here in Copenhagen, make sure you join us. If you look at this later in recording, the Stanford session has also been recorded and broadcasted, so keep on watching on the internet. Stefan, congratulations on these 2 years, on your presidency, on your legacy. And we're looking forward to have an awesome time with you here in Copenhagen. And we'll be hearing more of you in the future.
Thank you, Gerrit. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Let's stop the bikes. Fast forward time, I'm off the bikes, I'm back here at the Bella Center Copenhagen where it's Wednesday morning and the audience is getting ready to walk into room A2 for the closing plenary session, the presidential session hosted by Stefan Sneerberger, who you just saw. And by the way, let me do a hello and welcome to Colin White, project manager at the Irish Association for Transplantation, who's been watching and responding on Facebook. Welcome, Colin. If you want to join us in room A2, make sure you hop over to esottransplantlive.org. Now, this session is also hosted by the new ESOT President, Vassilios Papalois. And just about 2 hours ago, I had him here in the seat and chatted with him about his drive and ambitions looking forward. So I'm now joined by Vassilios Papalois, the just newly elected ESOT president. Vassilios, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to know personally, what drives you to take on this role for this community?
I mean, what has driven me from the very beginning in this vocation, my love for our patients and the opportunity to serve them and advance our services to them. And also this great feeling on working in a very close, very tight, very progressive community as it is the transplant community. And the opportunity to do innovative things and take our vocation to the next level and the next dimension.
Well, let's explore the next level a little bit. You will be the president for the next 2 years. What are your ambitions and dreams to achieve?
I mean, you are asking me to give up a little bit about my presidential address, which is in a few hours' time, but basically, first of all, to say that we want to celebrate our European identity and European values as a society, but also our international character. And this translates into a variety of projects we have started with the European Commission, with the Council of Europe, with the national competent authorities in transplantation and donation in Europe, and the European National Transplant Societies. And these are not projects which are dreams, these are real things for real people in real life that you can touch. Yeah. And they're happening over the last months and years. They're happening in this Congress, and they will happen in the time ahead of us. So that's the first big thing, and it's a new element, a new dimension in the ESOT portfolio. The second thing is this strong sense of community that I mentioned. We are a society, and that means a lot. It means togetherness. And again, we have a series of projects in place that express that. For example, our work with the new ESOT College of the National Transplant Societies that links us with all the transplant communities across Europe and allow us to help us to enhance their work on the ground and amplify their voice in Europe and facilitate their collaboration. Also, we have a fantastic educational portfolio, the width and depth of which is second to none. And this addresses professional development of people in real life. And if you've noticed, in the Congress, these Inspire and Drive sessions were all about the professional developments of colleagues during their whole career. We have a great program, and this will continue, of supporting the young leaders and the leaders of tomorrow through the Young People in Transplantation project, which was one of the strikes of genius, actually, of ESOT. And last but not least, and this was one of the main themes, one of the main pieces of work we did in this Congress, is our collaboration and work with the patients' associations. Patients' associations across Europe that very credibly serve the cause of donation and transplantation. They come under ESOT, and we try again to offer coordination and support to them for the future. So this strong sense of belonging, of community, of togetherness, and the project to support them. And the last but not least is that we have a direction of travel. And this is clear like
Which is the title of the closing plenary, where you will challenge people to take an outlook into the next 20 years, right? From a surgical perspective, physicians, and also the caretakers.
Absolutely. We want the Scientific Program Committee of ESOT 2039 to have everything ready for them. Yeah. So that is what the session is all about. Basically, we are the Society of Organ Transplantation. It is clear that organ transplantation will remain the dominant force in organ replacement treatment, but it's not lonely in the arena anymore. We have a series of modalities around it that support it, complement it, and enhance it. And ESOT embraces those modalities.
Can you give a few examples of these modalities?
Bioartificial organs, tissue engineering, stem cells, organ regeneration, and the list goes on and on and on. It's absolutely spectacular to see it flourishing around us. And we are making it part of who we are and what we do.
Exactly, because it's a significant game changer. That's no longer about donors and recipients, but there's all these new sources of solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the future, and it was said in so many times, in so many different ways at this Congress, and it will be demonstrated in the final plenary session. And not only this, equally importantly, not only will be part of the scientific and clinical developments, but we want to prepare the scientific community, the transplanters, for this new era. Because they will come their way. They need to be prepared for that, and we are really looking forward to it.
Wow, very exciting stuff. I wish you good luck on the journey and success on the journey in the next 2 years. And if you are curious to see the recording of this plenary session and this outlook for the next 20 years, make sure you sign up to esottransplantlive.org, get an account, and you have access to all the recordings of this Congress and the Congresses in the past.
To see what this could mean for the future. We have identified 2 unique individuals to take on this task. The first talk will be given by Ina Jochmans. Ina is